The last session of the day ahead of us. We're now halfway through the event. There's another day tomorrow, to which obviously all of you are invited, and I hope to see you there tomorrow. Just to explain a bit about what you're going to see in a minute. Obviously, in the Global Soft Power Index, we look at the soft power of nations according to their influence, their familiarity, their reputation. We compute it according to drivers analysis. So every metric has a specific weight within the index, and that's how we arrive at the overall ranking. And that's something that we're going to be unveiling tomorrow. But every year we look at the leaders in each of the individual categories, each of the individual metrics that feed into the Global Soft Power Index ranking. And that's the basis for what we call the Global Soft Power Awards. And we're now going to see a video summarizing the results and telling you what the leaders are in each of the metrics within the index. Inspired by the Olympic spirit, we have given gold, silver, and bronze medals to each of the leaders, the first, the second, and the third country in each category. So I'll request now if we could play the video to show the results of the Global Soft Power Awards.
Brand Finance's annual Global Soft Power Index measures and ranks every United Nations member state on the basis of their soft power. This ranking is based on global feedback from over 170,000 people in 100 countries on all continents. It is the most comprehensive measurement of nation brand perceptions in the world. To create a ranking of the overall soft power of each nation, Brand Finance compiles data from 45 unique metrics. This allows nations to measure, monitor, and improve their performance in each category over time to evaluate areas of strength and areas of weakness. Brand Finance has identified the top 3 nations in each of the 45 key metrics and, inspired by other great international sporting events, identified the gold medalist, silver medalist, and bronze medalist nation in each category. These 45 key metrics cover business and trade, international relations, education and science, culture and heritage, governance, media and communication, sustainable future, and people and values, as well as key performance indicators such as familiarity, reputation, and influence. The nations with the greatest performance across these measurement areas are those that are most successful at building soft power. In third place, with 5 gold medals, 4 silver medals, and 5 bronze medals, is the United Kingdom. In second place, with 12 gold medals, 1 silver medal, and 2 bronze medals, is the United States. And the overall winner, with 15 gold medals, 3 silver medals, and 1 bronze medal for a total of 19 medals, is Switzerland.
And we're pleased to have with us Minister and Deputy Head of Mission from the Embassy of Switzerland to collect the award from David Haigh, Chairman of Brand Finance, and then to join David in a short conversation about what makes Brand Switzerland so strong and what can other nations learn from it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Congratulations. Oh, we have a wonderful present for you here.
Wonderful.
There you go.
Feels like the Olympics.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Would you like to take a seat?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. It's 5:05. We will stop at 5:15. I'm conscious you've all been here all day. Do have a seat.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful you've stayed. I hope you've enjoyed it all. I do actually have a reward for all of you guys who've stayed, which is that I took the liberty of sourcing a Swiss beer that we can have to drink in the drinks afterwards. So you can get your mouths in shape now for, I don't know whether you've ever heard of it actually. It's called 1936.
Actually, I haven't.
It's from Verbier.
Okay.
You don't drink, don't tell me.
I do.
Anyway, apparently it's a very well-known Swiss beer that comes from Verbier. Although I was quite amused looking at how it arrived at its brand name. Are you aware of that?
No, I wouldn't.
No, you're not aware of it at all. Anyway, the brand name is 1936 because the postcode in Verbier is 1936, which I thought was a particularly dull reason for naming a brand. But, that's where the water comes from that goes into this wonderful beer. And reading it, I was salivating over there and thinking, I better keep this meeting short. But it allows me to introduce the first subject. Our tables tend to be dominated by very large countries. I mean, obviously, Britain is large, Germany is large, America is large. But some of the best performers, as we've just seen, in the table are actually quite small countries. Now, when we were in Davos, Conrad ran a seminar, and we had Alexander Edelman, who is in charge of Present Switzerland and was here last year, and he made a rather funny remark, because we were talking about, what made for success, and he said, well, boring is the new sexy, and that is why Switzerland is so successful. So I just want to kick off by saying, is that why Switzerland is so successful? Because boring is the new sexy, and you get away with everything. I mean, what do you attribute Switzerland's huge success to?
Thanks for the question. It's not an easy one. As you correctly pointed out, we're just, it's us, and then it's the nice beer and the drink. So we have to keep this short, snappy, and entertaining as much as we can. Boring the new sexy. Of course, we wouldn't see ourselves as being boring. Or if you want to put it differently, you can say it's not necessarily bad to be boring. Right? It's not necessarily bad. And what does boring mean, right, for the Swiss case? Something that comes to mind when I think about our political system is the institution, stability of the institutions. We have long-standing, very stable institutions that have grown over time. And I should add, they're also shielded from the political whims of daily business. So nobody questions institutions as we have them, and that has kept us stable in so many ways and predictable in so many ways. To be a bit more precise on institutions, one thing that we hold very dearly to our hearts is the involvement of each and every Swiss in the political system. So each and every Swiss has a say in what's happening. They have a stake in politics, and that also reflects on stability. Right. Just to give you sort of
paraphrasing, politicians are a bad thing for soft power.
Or you could say in the Swiss case, Switzerland is a country where the politicians are very unhappy and the population is very happy, unlike other countries.
Right, okay. But, if we look at the 7 or 8 pillars that we've got that measure soft power, I mean, do you think some are more important than others? For example, for other countries that want to try and emulate Switzerland?
Yeah. I would again sort of veer towards what is again very, very strongly embedded in our political tradition, but also in the setup of the system, and I think reflects on our branding success is the bottom-up approach. I think that's important to understand. For instance, take Swiss tourism, right? Mm-hmm. People would like to go to ski in the Swiss Alps. And if you look back in history, this is not something that was a grand scheme or plan of the government, but it's basically catering to the needs of British tourists at the time, who were seeking better places to stay overnight or a more convenient access to the touristy sites. And that was the spirit and the entrepreneurship of local business people, really local business people who said, we should do something about this, right? Mm-hmm. And they managed to gather momentum, they managed to gather finance, and build what has eventually become, the Swiss tourism industry. So it's again taking advantage of the creative forces there are, and giving them room to develop. So that sort of was one of the key factors to.
I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is the issue of neutrality.
Yeah.
Because Switzerland is famously neutral, yeah. And neutrality seems to be going out of fashion. I mean, other countries are surrendering neutrality. Yeah. How important do you think that is?
I think it's very important for our own identity. We have had, maybe unlike other countries, we've had very good experiences with our neutrality. I mean, it has kept us out of two very disastrous wars on the continent, as you know. It has helped us also during the Cold War, and it's something that people identify with. I mean, you're right to point out it has maybe gotten a bit more difficult to be neutral in a contentious, multipolar world. But nonetheless, there's always, we believe, merits in at least trying to seeing two sides of the story and trying not to be too involved on either side. I think there's always room for that. In our foreign policy, you see that we take on roles for mediation, representing interests of other countries. That has been something that's been going on. And you ask an average Swiss, and he would say he would definitely preserve that special notion of the country.
So here's Brand Finance. We are plugging our measurement of soft power for all we're worth. Mm. We're doing this wonderful piece of research. We get great segmented data on every country in every other country. Switzerland is a very scientific place. Yes. I mean, is Switzerland using this kind of data to refine its policies in relation to how it deals with different countries and how it presents itself in the world? I mean, are you actually using a scientific approach to the way you look at your foreign policy?
In terms of foreign policy, I mean, we take all these indicators and all these good assessments that are being done very seriously. I mean, it's always a big discussion whether we move up or down the ranking in certain indicators. So it's definitely a good point of orientation. But having said that, I think it's also equally relevant for us to have a long-term perspective and a long-term vision of where you want to go. That sort of goes back to, building good institutions, which are not at the whim of, a certain point in time where something seems to be in fashion and then it falls out of fashion. Mm. But having a long-term, you might say, boring view of things, build sort of a proper setup, which is long-term sustainable. I think that's the key. That's the key for.
Because I mean, on the subject of building institutions, yeah. I mean, Switzerland has been outstandingly successful at building its own institutions, but also being a place where other institutions can be based, like the UN, yes. And FIFA and various other organizations. So the current out-of-fashionness of multilateralism and the multilateral organizations must be a bit upsetting to Switzerland. Do you think they are going to go the way of the League of Nations, or do you think this is a storm in a teacup and it's going to come back because they are so important?
I would side with those saying it's maybe not a storm, not just in a teacup, but maybe in a bathtub. So it is a storm. We shouldn't gloss over the fact that the multilateral system is challenged in so many ways. But again, it sometimes helps to take a step back and take a longer term view, right? We can debate politics all day long, and we do it, rightly so. But look at policies and how they are being implemented. Who helps you to implement the policies that politicians decide on? It's the multilateral system. You can always do it alone, but there's nothing like having, a room with all stakeholders involved to devise policies, priorities that everybody can relate to then. And that is kind of, there's no real alternative to multilateralism, especially, with the big questions facing us, such as climate change and other issues. There's just no other way. So we double down on multilateralism, and we think, we're going for the OEC presidency in 2026. We're chairing the Human Rights Council now in Geneva. This is, again, a firm commitment to multilateralism because we take a long view on this.
Because in preparation for this event, I started having a look at the UN, for example, and it's one of those institutions that's extremely well known, but most people don't really know anything about it. They're vaguely aware of it. And it's only when you actually go and look at it, you realize what an amazing ecosystem of different entities it is. But looking at the funding, what we saw was that there are about 100,000 people employed by the UN globally. But the Secretariat only has a budget of about $3.5 billion, which is tiny.
Yes.
And if you take all of the agencies together, they have a budget of somewhere between $50 and $60 billion. Now, the US apparently contributes about 25% of that. Now, Donald Trump is clearly huffing and puffing and saying he's going to walk away. Do you think that if he does do that, others will step into the breach to finance the difference? So, for example, it looks to me like an opportunity for China. It looks like an opportunity for other people, possibly even for Switzerland. You might like to pay the divvy that he is no longer paying. Or do you think that if he does chop the funds off, there will be a panic and it will go down the pan?
Again, David, I mean, you raise excellent points, and we should be aware of the current political situation and take it very seriously. But, everyone who has worked in the multilateral field knows that it's not a day-to-day business, right? Yes, you can decide to leave a UN organization, but that doesn't mean the work of the organization stops, right? As you pointed out, there's other donors. They reshape and restructure the programs they're doing. And if you look back, I mean, the UN has never been a straight line of development where, there was all support for their activities. They have been criticized throughout their history. So I see this personally as a cyclical movement, and we might be now in a more difficult, challenging situation. But again, given the complexity of today's world and tomorrow's world, there is just no credible alternative of coming together and solving problems together, basically.
I mean, I said this morning when we kicked off that, we went to Davos feeling depressed, and I came away feeling not so depressed because everyone was saying there's a lot of bluff and it might not get as bad as they say. And I feel the same today, actually, because, the more I think about it, there is no other way of running the world other than having these sort of multilateral organizations. I mean, if you get rid of the World Health Organization, the World Intellectual Property Organization, the World Marine Organization, the Institute, the Court of Justice. I mean, basically, you destroy the infrastructure that runs the world. So I sort of wonder whether, in the same way that NATO is going to be refinanced probably by Europe, there'll be a shake-up, and suddenly the financing will be done a different way. But, it might not be the States.
It might not be the States, or, I mean, who knows? Nobody has a crystal ball, but the States might also come back after a few years, right? I mean, these shifts are always, basically the UN, and some people know this better than me, but it's always a mirror of the political realities, right? Look at the UN Security Council. That was a mirror of the political realities after World War II. It doesn't reflect today's political realities, although we still have a similar setup, and we've been discussing ways to alter that one way or another. But still, the institution as such has still survived to these days. This is the platform of the UN to discuss peace and security. And the funding comes sort of with the tasks that have rather increased over time, right? I mean, they haven't gotten smaller. We have, in all our countries, increased our budgets enormously, right? Because of tasks that not only affect us, but the world at large. So the tasks are there, the obligations are there, the interest to do something together is still there. And again, I think we're maybe now in a difficult position, or a rather challenging situation. But there, if you take a long-term view and see a little bit beyond the horizon, I think I'm fairly confident that we're going to be coming back to sort of a more multilateral, however it's going to be set up.
So keeping relatively quiet and working behind the scenes, actually.
I think that's always a good thing to do.
Boring is the new sexy.
Exactly.
So,
you said it.
we've got 5 minutes to go, and I did promise earlier that I would allow people to ask questions. Unfortunately, we ran out of time in the other session, but would anyone like to ask Alberto a question about the position of Switzerland? Chap at the back.
Oh, it's not going to be about the beer, because I don't know anything about it.
He doesn't know about the beer. Don't ask about the beer.
No, we know about the beer, all good. Okay. The question would be, you started off the panel with mentioning that boring is the new sexy, and basically my question would just be simply, are you happy with being positioned as a boring country, and that was discussed a bit last year with Alexander, or do you want to strive and try to position Switzerland as a fun place to be?
Yeah, I think I'm stuck with this boring title now, right? So
it's all Alexander's fault.
Yeah, it's his fault. But I like to phrase it like we're boring and sexy, right? So we have two sides. You can look at the boring side when you see sort of the political sphere. It's all about stability and institutions I was trying to explain. But if you dig a bit deeper, right, and see what's going on below that level, trust me, we're not that boring, right? In terms of companies, in terms of other activities, UN and so forth. So boring, yes, but not really, right? So, but to answer you, actually, we're quite comfortable, because we always found ourselves to be, not to say boring again, but stable, predictable, long-term oriented, and we're quite comfortable with that notion. So,
would anybody else like to? There we go. We've got some.
That's just a quick question. I know many years ago, Switzerland was one of the first countries to define their brand values. And I remember there were two. One was, I think, secure future, and another, I think, self-determination. I wonder, and that was probably 20 years ago. Have you changed them at all, or are you just sticking with them?
Well, I don't recall what we did 20 years ago, but the self-determination resonates with me in terms of independence, neutrality, finding our own way in the world, right? So I don't think that has changed much. And the first one was, what was it again? You said secure future. Well, that's also a quite broad term, but again, maybe that just alludes to the thinking back. That was okay. The turn of the fall of communism. It's a new world order. Where are we going to go? There's always the inherent quest and striving for some kind of peaceful cooperation with states, countries, neighbors. We're UN seat, we want to make sure that we have friendly relationships with each and every one. So hearing that, I don't think much has changed, actually. So
we'll take one last question, if there is one.
Good evening. I'm from India. So I want to ask you a question which was related to what you mentioned about the skiing and how the local entrepreneurs took the initiative and built the entire ecosystem. There's something beautiful about Switzerland from our perspective, which is almost all the brands that come out of Switzerland, they look at the world as a market. Their view is not restricted either to Switzerland or to the neighboring countries in Europe, like Nestle, ABB, the Schindler, and there's so many brands which are popular in India. So where does that sense of world as a market come from?
Two things come to mind. Don't forget, we're quite small. I mean, in terms of size and population, we have nowhere near as many inhabitants as in India. So 8-9 million, approaching 10 potentially. If you're that small, you have to look outside, right? You have to look outside. You have to see where your opportunities are. That's definitely one big thing, and that's been going on for a long, long time. And the second point I'd like to make is we're an immigrant society. I know immigration is a loaded term these days, and many people discuss and debate immigration, maybe rightly so, also quite lively. But at the very origin, it was a lot of good ideas from immigrants actually who shaped a lot of these companies that you just mentioned. For instance, Nestle was founded by, if I recall correctly, a German pharmacist who came there and had a brilliant idea and was given the room to expand on that idea. And there's many other examples today, especially the big corporations. You know, they're not run by Swiss, right? They're often run by foreigners. Just because also the talent pool in the country itself, being a small country, is fairly limited. So we try to attract talents from everywhere and with an outward perspective of the world. And I think that has worked well for us, right? That has worked well for us. So these are sort of the two.
I think it's quite interesting to me. It's quite notable that you have quite a lot of different cultural, ethnic, language groups, a lot. And those are the traditional ones, plus the ones that have come in. And yet Switzerland seems to be a particularly calm, tolerant place. So I don't know whether there's something going on below the surface that I don't know, but it does seem to work well compared with other countries.
Yeah, yes. There's many countries who have large portions of immigrants. Again, what I like to, this sounds again boring, but trust me, this is a big key to all this. It's going back to the idea that we're, I think, fairly successful in integrating the people. And how that works is you have a political system that allows you to be included in the political process. That's where the direct democracy comes in. Once you're a Swiss citizen, you can actually shape your environment. You can decide whether this school should go up or not, right? I mean, you have a vote in that. And that sort of helps you to identify with where you live, right? It's not just you retreat into your ghetto, if I may, right. And feel completely isolated from your actual home. So the integrative model of Switzerland has worked also thanks to its political system. Right?
Well, I did say I'd stop at past, and we've run over, so we will now stop. I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking the graveyard slot. It's very kind of you.
Of course.
I found that extremely interesting. And I think you're staying to have one of these 1936 beers.
Absolutely.
I hope the rest of you will stay and have one. And if you've got any other questions, you can ask Alberto. So you'll now have a queue of everyone asking you about whether they're boring or sexy. I think, for me, one of the interesting things about Switzerland is that it's discreet. And so, you know that point that you were just making a moment ago about India? Marco Casanova, I don't know whether he's here, he's our chairman. Oh, there he is. He's our chairman in Switzerland, and he's had a lot to do with the Swiss-Indian relationship. And you've just signed a trade deal with India, which is apparently going to be absolutely massive. And Switzerland has got a lot of these trade deals. You know, it's very good at quietly just going and doing it and keeping its head down and making lots of money. So, you know, having influence and money probably are helped by being boring rather than sexy. So with that, we can stop. I'd like you all to say thank you to Alberto. Come and join us for a drink. And I hope you'll come tomorrow, and I hope you've enjoyed the proceedings today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.